Liam Thorne demanded one of the Sterling daughters in marriage, or he wouldn't stop crushing our company. If we refused, the bank would foreclose the next morning. My father looked between my sister and me, his face drawn tight with panic and shame, until I stepped forward. "I'll do it," I said. I only had one condition: any funds the Thorne family injected had to go toward stabilizing the company my mother had left behind. My father nodded so fast it was almost painful to watch. Of course. That goes without saying. My younger sister, Amber Sterling, cried out and clung to me like she could physically keep me from walking into it. "Liam Thorne is insane. He hates us. He'll make your life miserable if you marry him." I stroked her hair, forcing calm into my voice. Amber was only 20, soft, bright, untouched by the uglier parts of the world. How could she be the one sent into a lion's den? "Liam and I grew up together," I murmured. "Maybe he won't be too hard on me." That was the lie I told her. The truth was simpler and crueler. I was running out of time. The doctors had used careful words, but their eyes had said everything. Late stage. Limited options. I hadn't told anyone. I'd swallowed the diagnosis like a secret stone and kept walking. So when the wedding arrangements began, I didn't fight them. I didn't cry. I just signed what was placed in front of me, smiled when I was told to smile, and let the days carry me forward like a tide. On the wedding day, the ballroom was a glittering sea of chandeliers and expensive perfume. Guests filled every seat. Cameras flashed. Voices overlapped in excited waves. Standing on the stage in my white gown, I remembered a different time: sunlight through trees, scraped knees, laughter that felt like it would last forever. Liam Thorne had once clung to a tree branch, calling after me, "Lara. When we grow up, will you marry me?" Back then, he'd said my nickname like it was something precious. The boy who used to grin at me with grass stains on his sleeves had become a man so handsome it was almost unfair: sharp suit, colder eyes, a presence that made the room feel smaller. Our childhood joke had come true. Or so I thought. The doors opened. Liam Thorne walked in, arm in arm with another woman. She was dressed in a wedding gown too. Two brides. For a second, the entire room froze as if someone had cut the music. Then chaos erupted. Guests surged to their feet. Reporters leaned forward like sharks scenting blood and water. Flashbulbs stuttered in frantic bursts, capturing the absurdity from every angle. Liam led the woman, Celeste Hayes, straight toward me, and his voice carried through the ballroom with practiced ease. "Today," he announced, "the woman I'm marrying is Celeste Hayes." His gaze slid to me, not warm, not apologetic, simply indifferent. "As for her," he added, as if I were an object someone had wrapped and delivered, "she's just a gift." Someone behind me shoved lightly at my back, urging me forward like a prop that needed to hit her mark. I didn't have to turn to know it was my family. Their desperation had stripped them of shame. The stairs hit first, dozens, then hundreds. They were heavy and sharp, carving away at my dignity in slow, merciless strokes. "Liam Thorne," I said, forcing my spine straight, my chin level. "Don't go too far." I clung to the last shred of grace expected of a Sterling heiress. The last thing I owned that no one could take without permission. He leaned close, his breath brushing my ear, his voice low enough to feel private and somehow even crueler for it. "Watch closely," he whispered. "If you dare to take even one step away, the Sterlings will be bankrupt tomorrow." A chill ran through me, not from fear of him, but from the precision of the trap. He'd made sure there was nowhere I could stand that wasn't humiliating. And then, under the roar of the ballroom, I heard it. A voice, close, intimate, as if it had formed inside my skull. "Isn't this too much for Lara? She looks like she's about to shatter." Another voice, sharper, cut in immediately. "No. Don't go soft. Don't forget how my parents died." My heart stuttered. Lara. That nickname didn't exist in this room. It wasn't on the invitations. It wasn't in the papers. It wasn't something the world knew. It was a secret, one only Liam had ever used. Why would I hear it now? I shook my head once, hard, as if I could knock the thought loose. The wedding was loud. My nerves were frayed. It had to be my imagination. The ceremony continued as if nothing had happened. As if my humiliation was just a quirky detail to spice up the headlines. I stood there dazedly while Liam and Celeste exchanged vows and rings, my hands folded in front of me like a statue. Guests whispered freely, not caring if I heard. Maybe they wanted me to. Look at that Sterling girl. Pathetic. Serves her right. Her mother ruined the Thorne family back then. The Sterlings have no shame. Offering up their daughter like this. And Mr. Thorne doesn't even want her. Who shows up in a wedding dress for a wedding that isn't hers? The nerve. I forced a smile until my face ached, enduring the gloating looks and cutting laughter. My family sat in a corner, pale and rigid, too terrified to move, too ashamed to defend me. After it ended, my father stormed up to me, his anger spilling out like it had somewhere else to go. Why didn't you tell me Liam Thorne would do this? He snapped. You made us lose face in front of everyone. Father, I whispered, my throat tight. I only just found out myself. Useless. He yanked his hand away from mine like I'd burned him and walked off, leaving me standing alone in the wreckage of my own wedding. A sharp pain flared in my chest. I pressed a handkerchief to my mouth, willing myself to breathe normally, willing my body to behave. When I pulled it back, there was blood. Not much. Just enough to remind me I was on borrowed time. I stared across the ballroom at Liam's retreating back. Does this kind of revenge make you happy? I thought, and my mind dragged me back 5 years to the beginning of all of this. The Thorne family had suffered a tragedy. Their company collapsed almost overnight. Evidence had surfaced, documents, messages, trails that all seemed to point in one direction, my mother. They said she stole business secrets. They said she pushed them into bankruptcy. They said she destroyed them, and then she died before anyone could drag the truth from her. Liam's father died soon after. Liam's mother followed not long after, a chain of misfortune and despair that the world packaged into one neat headline. From then on, our families became enemies in the ugliest way. Liam disappeared from my life completely, like someone had erased him with a single brutal stroke. When I heard his name again, he was no longer the boy in the trees. He was an influential magnate with a cold smile and a heart full of sharpened hatred. I looked down at the handkerchief and forced a smile that felt more like pain than expression. As for the truth, I told myself, I don't have the strength to chase it anymore. Let Liam believe what he wanted. Let him pour all his anger into me if it kept the company alive a little longer. If it kept Amber safe. Let me use what time I had left to pay a debt I hadn't created. I swallowed, steadying myself, pushing the blood and the weakness down where no one could see it. I'll be gone soon, I thought. And then you'll get what you want. Even though I hadn't been the bride, the agreement had been signed. That was the part Liam cared about. The paper. The leverage. I moved into the Thorne mansion the next day. The butler led me up a polished staircase and down a hallway that smelled faintly of roses and cold marble. He stopped at a narrow door at the far end and opened it without ceremony. Mr. Thorne said Ms. Hayes will reside in the master bedroom, he said. You will stay here. The room was cramped, one single bed, an old desk, a small closet with a door that stuck when you pulled it. It was the kind of room meant for someone who didn't matter. Mr. Hemmings, the head butler, watched my face with open contempt. You are a servant here, he said flatly. Do not imagine you'll receive any special privileges. I stared at the room and understood the point immediately. Liam wanted me to remember, every waking second, exactly what I was in his house. Not a guest. Not a wife. Not even a nuisance he tolerated. A lesson. That night, the coughing came in waves. I curled on the narrow bed, shaking with cold sweat, waiting for the ache in my chest to settle. The medication I'd been clinging to felt weaker every day, like even my body was tired of fighting. I told myself I could endure anything if it meant Amber didn't have to. Life at the Thorne mansion was harsher than I'd imagined. On the first morning, Mr. Hemmings woke me before dawn. 5 o'clock, he said. Get up. There's work. I cleaned until my hands were raw and my back ached. When Liam came downstairs, I was in the kitchen, trying to prepare breakfast exactly the way I'd been told. Celeste Hayes appeared beside him, slipping her arm through his like she belonged there, because she did. Why would Miss Sterling cook? Celeste asked lightly, her voice sweet. We have servants. Liam snorted, looking at me as if I were a stain on the floor. If she doesn't, who will? The Sterling sent her here to serve. I understand, I said, even as my fists clenched at my sides. When breakfast was plated, Celeste took one bite and immediately frowned, delicate and displeased. It's too salty, she said, turning to Liam with wide eyes. I can't eat this. Liam's gaze snapped to me. On purpose? He said coldly. No, I began. He didn't let me finish. He grabbed the plate and threw it to the floor. Porcelain shattered. Food splattered across my skirt and shoes. The sound rang in the kitchen like a slap. I bent down without a word and started cleaning. You can't even make breakfast, Liam sneered. What good are you? Don't eat today. Kneel here and reflect. I looked up, the humiliation burning through me. Why should I? Liam stepped closer, his eyes like winter glass. Why should you? He repeated softly. Because I can destroy the Sterlings at any moment. And then, again, that strange whisper, close enough to feel like breath against my thoughts. I shouldn't have agreed to let Laura marry me. My fingers paused on a shard of porcelain. Confusion and something sharper twisted in my chest. I swallowed it down, lowered my gaze, and knelt. Liam and Celeste walked past me as they left, hand in hand, not sparing me a single glance. I knelt from 7 in the morning until noon. 5 hours. My knees went numb. My legs trembled. But the ache in my chest was worse, not pain, exactly, but the slow, heavy realization of how far Liam was willing to go. When they returned, Liam paused, looking almost surprised. You really stayed there the whole time? He said, like he'd expected me to crawl away. Such a stubborn fool. And the voice, different now, almost exasperated, rose in my ears again. How can she be so stupid? She doesn't even know how to slack off. Is this really the time to be stubborn? Get up, Liam ordered. Go prepare lunch. I pushed myself to my feet. My knees screamed. I nearly fell, catching myself against the wall, then shuffled toward the kitchen in small, careful steps. By then, a pattern had formed in my mind, no matter how much I tried to deny it. Whenever Liam was close, those voices appeared. Thoughts. Not mine. Could they be his? At lunch, I sat down at the table out of habit more than confidence. Liam's voice cut through the clink of utensils. You're a servant, he said. Go to the servants' table. Over there. Heat rose to my face. I stood, bit down on my pride, and walked to the smaller table near the wall. A moment later, Liam called me back with a curl of his finger, like you'd summon a pet. He pointed at Celeste's untouched leftovers. It's a waste to throw it out. You eat it. Celeste covered her mouth, giggling as if it were a joke she'd been invited to enjoy. Liam, she cooed, isn't that inappropriate? How can sister eat my leftovers? Liam's hand caught my wrist, pulling me closer. For a split second, something flashed in his eyes, agitation, maybe, or something he didn't want anyone to see. Your mother's debt, he said lowly, you must pay. Understand what happens if you defy me. And then, under the surface of his icy tone, the whispers again, tangled, bitter, conflicted. Her mother's actions have nothing to do with her. No, Liam. Don't forget your parents. They were innocent too. My throat tightened. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. Under the stares and the mocking air of the room, I picked up my fork and ate. The next day, Liam announced a family dinner and invited business partners. You will be responsible for cooking and serving, he said, as if assigning a punishment. I spent the entire day in a frantic rush, prepping, chopping, stirring, tasting with hands that shook from exhaustion. When the guests arrived, I was forced into a maid's uniform and made to move through the crowd with a tray in my hands and a smile that felt like a cracked mask. Whispers followed me like shadows. Isn't that the Sterling heiress? Why is she serving? I heard Mr. Thorne only loves Miss Hayes. She's shamelessly clinging to the Thorne mansion. This is his way of punishing her. Celeste waited until Liam stepped away, then tilted a bowl of hot soup toward me with a pretty, careless motion. Oops, she said, voice dripping with false concern. I'm so sorry. My hand slipped. Heat flared across my arm. I sucked in a breath and forced a smile that tasted like iron. "It's okay," I said evenly. "I'll go change." Back in my room, I peeled off the soaked uniform. The skin on my arm was red and angry, already swelling in places. In the mirror, my face looked too pale, my eyes too shadowed. I pressed my knuckles against my lips to suppress another cough until I tasted blood again. I stared at my reflection, the absurdity of it all pressing down on me. Watching them be affectionate. Being made into a joke. Wearing a maid's uniform in the house I'd married into. "I'll consider it." "A price," I whispered to the girl in the mirror, my voice brittle with self-mockery. "After all, I don't have much time left." That was when I noticed something outside my door, a small jar of burn ointment, placed quietly on the floor as if someone didn't want to be seen. My heart jolted. Before I could reach it, footsteps sounded down the hall. By the time I opened the door wider, it was gone. On the third day, Liam ordered me to clean the swimming pool. The early autumn air had teeth. The water was icy, the kind of cold that sank into your bones. I crouched at the edge, scrubbing tiles until my fingers felt stiff and numb. Then someone bumped me from behind. I pitched forward. The shock of the water stole my breath. For a terrifying moment, everything was cold and noise and panic, and I fought my way back to the surface, coughing hard, choking on water, the metallic taste rising in my mouth again. Celeste stood above me, hands clasped like a saint, her eyes bright with apology that didn't reach her smile. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I accidentally bumped into you." I hauled myself out, shivering, soaked through, my chest aching as if it had been squeezed in a fist. Liam arrived just then, his gaze scanning the pool like I was part of the mess. "It's not clean here," Celeste said, pointing to a spot so small it could have been imagined. Liam's mouth tightened. "Do it again," he ordered. On the fourth day, I woke dizzy. My throat was raw. My head ached. Whatever I'd caught from the pool didn't matter much compared to everything else, but it layered weakness on top of weakness till even sitting up felt like dragging myself through mud. I forced myself upright anyway. I folded my blood-stained handkerchief carefully and hid it in a small compartment behind the mirror, one of the few private spaces left to me. In the reflection, I looked worse than yesterday. The shadows under my eyes were darker, my cheeks too hollow. I opened a compact and applied foundation with meticulous care, covering evidence like I was painting over a crack in a wall. I can't let him know I'm dying. For some reason, I didn't want Liam Thorne to see the truth. Maybe I couldn't bear the thought of pity from him. Maybe I wanted him to keep hating me if it meant he never looked close enough to see what was happening to my body. This revenge won't be fun if I'm already halfway gone, I thought bitterly, then flinched at how cruel my own mind sounded. "Just get through today," I whispered, as if I could bargain with time. "And then tomorrow." That day, I was ordered to prune the roses in the garden. No gloves. No tools. So I removed thorns with my bare hands, wincing as sharp points nicked and scratched my skin. My fingers stung, dotted with tiny cuts that wouldn't stop oozing. The roses were beautiful in the way something beautiful can still hurt you. That evening, at dinner, Liam glanced at my hands and tilted his head, almost amused. "Look," he said to Celeste. "Those stains, like roses." Celeste giggled. "Liam, you're so funny." On the fifth day, Liam ordered me to tidy the study. I dusted shelves lined with heavy books and polished the desk until it shone. In the back of a closet, I found an old box. When I opened it, something soft tumbled out. A pink teddy bear. I picked it up slowly, like it might vanish if I moved too fast. A small tag hung from its ear, and in messy handwriting were words that made my chest tighten. "To Lara, from Liam." Someone had smeared black ink across the name, over and over, like an attempt to erase it. But if you tilted it just right, the letters still showed through. My throat went dry. Without thinking, I turned toward the doorway, my voice coming out quieter than I intended. "Liam, was this something you made for me when we were kids?" My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, thin and cracked around the edges. He was standing in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame, as if he'd been there longer than he wanted to admit. His gaze dropped to the teddy bear in my hands, and for a second the practiced indifference on his face slipped. Then it snapped back into place. "Put that down," he said. The words were cold. His eyes weren't. Is she really still able to smile holding that thing? The thought brushed through my mind like a gust of air, familiar now in its wrongness. My fingers tightened around the bear. "I shouldn't have left that here." The second voice overlapped, harsher. "It doesn't matter. She doesn't deserve it. She doesn't deserve anything." My heart lurched. I swallowed. "You kept it," I said quietly. "All these years." His jaw flexed. "I didn't keep anything. The staff boxed up whatever my parents didn't throw out." "That's not true," I whispered before I could stop myself. "You used to hide things you didn't want the adults to touch. Under the old elm tree. In the attic, behind the suitcases. In hollow books on the third shelf, left side." His eyes flickered. For a moment, I saw the boy from the tree branch, not the man who'd dragged me to the altar to humiliate me. "Don't talk like you know me," he said, but it came out rougher than before. "You don't." I almost laughed. "You're right. I thought I did once. Then my mother destroyed your family, and suddenly I didn't recognize you at all." Something flash burned in his gaze, violent and bright. "Don't say her name." My fingers trembled around the teddy bear. "Why are you here?" he demanded. "In my study. Going through my things. I was told to tidy up," I said. "Servant, remember?" His gaze sliced to the pink bear, then back to my face. "That is not to be touched." He moved toward me, hand outstretched. I took a step back on instinct and the room tilted. The floor slipped. The edges of my vision darkened like someone was slowly turning down a dimmer switch. I felt the cough rise from deep inside my chest, sharp and unstoppable. I tried to smother it, but pain tore through my ribs. The handkerchief was in my fingers before I knew I'd grabbed it. I covered my mouth just as the cough ripped free. It felt like glass. When it finally eased, my lungs burned. My knees buckled. I clutched the edge of the desk with my free hand and stared down at the fabric. Fresh red bloomed through the white. For a second, everything was nothing but the sound of my own heartbeat and the faint, disbelieving thought that I'd been careful. I'd been so careful. No one had seen until now. Fingers closed around my wrist. Liam's face was suddenly too close, his eyes fixed on the handkerchief. His voice when it came wasn't controlled at all. "Lara," he breathed, the nickname torn out of him like an old habit. "What the hell is that?" "She's bleeding. Again." "How long has this been happening?" I stared at him. "Again." The room swayed. "Let go," I said, but there was no strength behind it. He didn't. His grip tightened, anchoring me upright. "How long have you been?" "It's been days. Weeks." "Idiot." I should have watched her more closely. The second voice snapped back, vicious. "What do you care? She's a sterling. Let her cough herself to death." My head spun. "I'm fine," I lied. The words came out as a whisper. "It's nothing." "She thinks this is nothing?" "Mr. Thorne?" I said faintly. "You're squeezing my wrist." He looked down as if only just realizing, then released me abruptly. I stumbled back. The world tilted sideways. The last thing I saw was his face stripped of its armor, panic, disbelief, fury all tangled together. The last thing I heard was his thought, raw and unguarded. "If she dies in my house, I'll never." Darkness closed over everything. I woke to the antiseptic sting of hospital air and the distant beeping of a monitor. The ceiling was too white. The light was too sharp. My throat tasted like metal and cotton. Someone was arguing nearby in hushed, furious tones. "You're telling me," Liam's voice said, low and lethal, "that she has been coughing up blood and no one thought to inform me? You instructed the household staff that Miss Sterling was not to receive any special treatment," another voice replied, calmer, professional, threaded with a faint steel I associated with people who'd seen too many impossible cases. "They assumed you didn't care to be bothered." I told them she was a servant, he bit out. "Not that they should let her drop dead on my floor. I was never supposed to find out like this." The thought pressed against the inside of my skull, thick with grief and guilt. If she knew how my parents... No. Stick to the facts. Don't let him distract you. This isn't only about stress, the doctor said. Frankly, I'm concerned this was missed for so long. Papers rustled. Her previous files say late-stage pulmonary carcinoma, the doctor went on. But the scans you brought in from your home safe and the labs we just ran don't support that. Silence. Explain, Liam said. Her lungs are damaged, yes. There's scarring. Inflammation. She has a serious autoimmune condition that's been eating away at her for years. But it isn't the type of cancer listed. It's treatable if we intervene properly. Hard, but not hopeless. My fingers twitched against the sheets. Not cancer? No. No, that wasn't right. I remembered the way the oncologist had looked at me, the heavy sympathy in his eyes. I remembered the word metastasized. I remembered the way the letters on the printed report had seemed to float. Are you saying the specialist was wrong? Liam demanded. That's one option. A pause. Or someone altered the reporting. My heart lurched. Altered? Liam repeated, voice flat. We cross-checked the imaging timestamps with the report metadata, the doctor said. They don't line up. Ms. Sterling's scans were taken 2 days after the report was supposedly finalized. The name of the reviewing physician is interesting, too. He signed off on several financial disclosures attached to the Thorne Corporation's crash, on the side of the prosecution. The crash. My mother. It felt like someone had poured cold water straight into my veins. That's impossible, Liam said. But there was a crack in it. Are you suggesting someone wanted her to believe she was dying? Think, Liam. Who would benefit from that? My pulse hammered. My body ached. Every breath hurt, but not like before. There was something new in the pain, an edge of anger. Of course someone would. A terminal diagnosis was the perfect leash. If you hadn't brought her in today, the doctor continued soberly, she might have collapsed alone and not woken up. Regardless of the past, she needs rest, adherence to treatment, and to stay away from physical strain and extreme stress. Liam didn't answer. The air around the silence felt charged. The next time he spoke, his voice was quiet. What are her chances? With proper care? The doctor said. Better than whoever wrote that report wanted her to believe. Footsteps approached. I snapped my eyes shut, my body instinctively going still. The door opened with a soft click, and the scent of expensive cologne cut through the sterile air. She's awake, Liam said. Of course she's awake. She always pretends not to hear things that might hurt. Miss Sterling, the doctor said, closer now. How are you feeling? I opened my eyes. The man in the white coat was middle-aged, sharp-eyed, and tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Liam stood behind him, hands in his pockets, suit jacket thrown over one arm as if he'd been pacing. His tie was loosened. There were faint shadows under his eyes. He looked human. That unnerved me more than the hospital. I've been better, I said hoarsely. I half expected a thought to go through my mind, something sharp or cruel or self-loathing. Instead, there was only silence. Maybe my brain had finally decided it had had enough hallucinations for one day. We've run tests, the doctor said gently. I'd like to talk to you about your previous diagnosis and what we found today. He laid it out in calm, measured words. Autoimmune disease. Chronic inflammation. Damage, but not the inexorable countdown I carried like a clock in my pocket. We'll need to adjust your medication, he finished. And I strongly advise you to avoid excessive exertion or emotional distress. You've been under extreme stress for a long time, Ms. Sterling. It isn't sustainable. A laugh bubbled up, thin and bitter. You don't say. His mouth twitched. Liam hadn't spoken. When I finally looked at him, really looked, he was watching me like I was a fuse he'd lit without understanding how far the spark would travel. Did you know? I asked quietly. For once, he didn't hide. No, he said. If I had, I wouldn't have made you kneel on cold tile for 5 hours. I wouldn't have thrown that plate. I wouldn't have. The second voice cut across the first, sharp. You're lying to yourself. You would have done it anyway. She's a Sterling. That's what they deserve. I flinched. The doctor glanced between us, frowning faintly. I'll give you two a moment. When he left, the room felt smaller. The hum of the machines grew louder. I could hear my own breathing, shaky and uneven. So, I said, staring at the blanket over my legs. I'm not dying. Or not quickly enough to be convenient for anyone. His shoulders stiffened. No one except an idiot or a monster would find that convenient. Then we've narrowed it down, I murmured. Whoever falsified the report is either an idiot or a monster. Liam's gaze sharpened. Do you have any idea who it might be? Images flickered through my mind. My father avoiding my eyes when I'd first told him about the diagnosis. The way he'd latched onto the marriage proposal like it was a lifeboat. The speed with which the wedding had been arranged, like someone racing a clock I hadn't seen. Who had the most to gain from me believing I had one foot in the grave? I countered. Who benefits if I don't bother asking questions? He didn't answer out loud. Of course it's him. The thought was quiet, almost weary. Of course it's Sterling. Something in my chest broke. Whatever game you're playing with my family, I said, my voice low and shaking, leave Amber out of it. She didn't do anything. He stared at me. You nearly died, he said. And you're worried about your sister? She's the only thing she cares about. Even now. That was always the deal, I said simply. Me, for them. His jaw clenched. What if that deal was built on a lie? Then it's still the only thing I've got, I whispered. I can't undo the wedding. I can't resurrect your parents or bring back my mother to defend herself. I can barely stand up right now without a nurse. The only thing that's mine to choose is what I do with whatever time I have, however long or short. He looked at me for a long moment. Rest, he said finally. We'll talk when you're stronger. Is that an order, Mr. Thorne? It's common sense, he snapped, turning away. Try it sometime. But as he reached for the door, I heard it again, faint, raw, overlapping itself. She keeps saying she doesn't have the strength to chase the truth. Fine. I'll chase it for both of us. No, you won't. You know what you'll find. My headache throbbed behind my eyes. Liam, I said. He stopped. Whatever else happens, I said softly, thank you for not letting me die on your floor. He didn't turn around. Don't thank me, he said. You're not off the hook yet. But his hand on the door trembled. They discharged me 2 days later with pills, inhalers, and a list of instructions that might as well have been titled How Not to Collapse in Your Employer's Mansion Again. When I stepped back into the Thorne mansion, the staff looked at me like they'd seen a ghost. Mr. Hemming's lips thinned, but he bowed slightly. Miss Sterling, he said stiffly. Mr. Thorne has instructed that your room be changed. He led me not to the narrow broom closet at the end of the hall, but to a room on the second floor with a window that caught the afternoon light and a bed that didn't squeak when I breathed. The sheets were new. The furniture was simple but solid. There was a small armchair by the window and, on the nightstand, a glass of water and the burn ointment I'd never reached for after the soup incident. Someone had uncapped it and tested a thumb against the opening. Whose room is this? I asked quietly. Yours, he said. For as long as you remain here. Whose idea do you think this was? The answering thought was sharp and disdainful, but beneath it was something else. Frustration. Reluctant concern. I could have been imagining it. Maybe my brain was still scrambled from the fainting episode. Does Ms. Hayes know? I asked. Mr. Hemming's mouth tightened. Ms. Hayes is staying with her parents while Mr. Thorne handles urgent corporate matters. Translating, she'd thrown a fit and been gently removed from the blast radius. I see, I murmured. I didn't see anything at all. The ground had shifted underneath me so many times in the last 48 hours that I wasn't sure where solid even was. That night, I lay awake listening to the tick of the clock and the distant sounds of the house. My body hurt, but in a dull, manageable way. Every time I coughed, I could feel the medicine pushing back. Not terminal. The words wouldn't settle in my mind. I'd built my entire world around the idea that I was already halfway gone. Every choice, every sacrifice, every humiliation I'd swallowed had been easier because I'd believed it would end soon. If that was gone, what excuse did I have left? Around midnight, I gave up on sleep and reached for the teddy bear. It sat where I'd left it on the dresser, its fur faded, the tag still ink-smeared. I turned it over in my hands, fingers tracing the seams. Why did you keep this? I whispered to the empty room. The bear didn't answer. But when I squeezed its stomach, something inside shifted with a faint click. I froze. Carefully, I probed the stitching along its back. A line of thread looked newer than the rest, the color almost identical but not quite. My heart hammered. Someone had opened this. Someone had sewn it back up. My fingers worked the seam loose. A second later, something small and hard slid into my palm. A flash drive. I stared at it, my throat suddenly dry. Of course, I breathed. Liam's parents had been meticulous. They trusted lawyers and auditors and forensic accountants. But how much had they trusted their own son? How far ahead had they planned when everything fell apart? It would be just like them to hide something where no one else would think to look. In the one object their boy refused to throw away. Or tried to. The name smeared out on the tag wasn't just an act of hatred. It was a failed attempt at erasure. I closed my fingers around the drive. There are things not even you could run from, Liam, I thought. The next morning, I went to the study before anyone could stop me. The computer on his desk was as sleek and expensive as everything else in the house. I sat in his chair, because what were they going to do, evict me? And pushed the flash drive into the side port. The screen blinked. A single folder popped up, labeled with a date 5 years ago. The week the Thorne Corporation imploded. The week Liam disappeared from my life and re-emerged carved from ice. My mouse hovered. My chest hurt, but not from illness. Show me, I whispered. I opened the folder. Emails. Transaction records. Internal memos. Audio files labeled with names I recognized, Hayes Holdings. Sterling Group. My mother's maiden name. Liam's father's personal account. I clicked the first audio file. Static, then a man's voice, exhausted, furious. This is extortion, Liam's father said. You falsified reports, pushed our stock to the brink, then offered a lifeline with an interest rate that would bleed us dry. If I sign this, the board will crucify me. Another voice answered, smooth and amused. That's the beauty of it, Mr. Thorne. By the time they notice, your board will be my board. Besides, you can always blame the leak on your little competitor. What was her name again? Ah. Sterling. My stomach dropped. Sterling. But she provided information she shouldn't have had, the man went on, unbothered. You'll say she stole it. People love a story where the ambitious woman overreaches and falls. We'll feed them whatever they want. Lucy and Hayes, Liam's father ground out. If you think I'll let you. The audio clicked off, truncated. The next file picked up mid-argument. This time, my mother's voice threaded through the static, sharp and shaking. You want me to sign this, she said. So you can say I destroyed them. It's a simple NDA, someone soothed. You've been paid well for your consulting. Sign, walk away, enjoy your life. Mr. Thorne knows the risks of his market. This is just insurance. You're lying, she said. If I sign, you'll put my name on whatever this is. You'll use me as a shield. You're very clever, Miss Sterling. Exactly why your expertise is so valuable. But you seem to be under the impression you still have a choice. A pause. Papers rustled. My mother's breath hitched. Think of your daughters, the voice murmured. Think of your husband. Do you really want to drag them into a legal war they'll never win? The file ended with a soft, terrible sentence, my mother whispering, if they ever hear this, they'll know I tried. I sat frozen. The office felt too small. The air was too thin. You didn't steal anything, I whispered into the empty room. You were the one they used. My hands shook so badly the mouse nearly slipped. I forced myself to click through more files. Payments from Hayes Holdings to a shell company that eventually led back to a Sterling-controlled subsidiary. Internal Thorne emails raising concerns about unusual inventory discrepancies that were brushed off with assurances, all signed by mid-level managers who'd later been promoted in Hayes' acquisition. On the last day in the folder, a domestic file name, if something happens. I clicked it. My mother's face filled the screen. She looked tired, older than she'd been the last time I'd seen her in person. But her eyes were clear. If you're watching this, she said, then something went wrong. She swallowed. Liam. Laura. I know you two better than you think. I know you'll blame yourselves for things that were never yours to carry. I dug my nails into my palms. Lucy and Hayes and his partners manipulated the market, she said. They used my notes to engineer a collapse, then offered your parents a loan they couldn't accept without sinking themselves. I refused to be their shield. I refused to sign. But the paperwork they showed me, Sterling's name was on some of it. Not mine. His. My father. He knew, she whispered. Maybe not everything, but enough. He thought he could ride the wave and jump off before it crashed. He was wrong. Your father, Liam, refused to play along. That's why they're targeting him through me. She took a shuddering breath. If I'm not there to explain, you'll hear a version of this story where I'm the villain, she said. You'll hear that I betrayed everyone. That I stole, that I lied. Please, don't take the first story you're handed. I know you, Liam. You want the world to be simple. You want a clean target. But the truth is always messier than that. Her gaze softened. And you, Lara. You'll think you don't have the right to ask questions. You'll swallow whatever they tell you and call it loyalty. Don't. Loyalty without truth isn't love. It's just fear with better PR. My vision blurred. I don't know if this will ever reach you, she said. But if it does, don't let them turn you against each other. The two of you were always braver than the adults in the room. The video cut off. I stared at the frozen blank screen until my eyes burned. Behind me, the door clicked. If you were going to break into my files, Liam said, you could have at least waited for me. I turned in the chair. He stood in the doorway, tie on entirely, sleeves rolled up, the top two buttons of his shirt undone. He looked like he hadn't slept. His gaze went from the monitor to the flash drive in the computer to my face. Then to the teddy bear on the desk. Of course. The bear. How much did you see? He asked. I swallowed. Enough. He stepped into the room slowly, like he was walking through a minefield he'd laid himself. What's enough? He said. Enough to know my mother wasn't the one who destroyed you, I said, my voice raw. Enough to know Hayes framed her. Enough to know my father helped. Silence roared between us. Don't say it. Don't make it real. Lara, he said finally, You wanted a clean target, I said. You needed one. We were easy. The narrative fit. Ambitious woman, stolen secrets, ruined family. Neat, satisfying, tragic. He flinched. I looked for proof, he said quietly. I begged my parents' lawyers for it. They showed me documents with your mother's signature. Emails from her account. Transfers from Sterling Holdings. It all pointed one way. They doctored my diagnosis, I said. You think they wouldn't forge a few emails? His mouth compressed. If I'd found this then. He broke off. It doesn't matter. You didn't. That's the problem, though, isn't it? I said. You didn't look hard enough. You let your grief pick the enemy that hurt the most and never questioned if it was true. His eyes flared. And what about you? You believed your father when he said marrying me was the only way to save your precious company. You never asked what he was saving it from. Myself, I said, bitterly. Apparently. We stared at each other over the desk. So, I said finally. What now, Mr. Thorne? You've been punishing the wrong woman for 5 years. Does your revenge feel satisfying? He flinched as if I'd slapped him. No. It feels like swallowing glass. Lara, he said slowly, I'm not asking you to forgive me. Good, I said. Because I don't. But this changes things, he pushed on. For both of us. Hayes is still in bed with your father. Celeste's family controls a chunk of my board. If this comes out without a plan, they'll spin it. They'll bury you, your mother, and my parents all over again. We need to move carefully. We. The word yanked at something low in my chest. The second voice hissed. Don't trust her. Don't let her in. She'll choose them over you. I pressed my fingers to my temple. The headache spiked. I don't care about your board, I said. Or Hayes, or your shareholders, or who wins the next proxy war. I care about 2 things. Clearing my mother's name. And making sure Amber doesn't pay for what our father did. His gaze sharpened. You think I'd go after your sister? Wouldn't you? I asked. You went after me. I went after a woman I believed had grown up watching her mother destroy my family and decided to marry me anyway, he snapped. I thought you walked into that ballroom at her side like it was a game. Like my parents' deaths were a footnote to your financial problems. It landed heavier than I expected. We had both been screaming inside our own versions of the story, neither bothering to listen to the others. I took a breath that hurt. We can stand here throwing old wounds at each other until my lungs give out again. Or we can make a deal. His brows lifted. A deal. You want Hayes, I said. You want the truth about what happened to your parents out in the open, not buried under clever headlines and edited reports. I want the same for my mother. The evidence is right here. I tapped the flash drive. I also want Amber legally protected. Whatever happens to my father, her shares get converted into a trust in her name, inaccessible to him. She finishes school. She gets a life that isn't built on our parents' crimes. That's a tall order, he said, but there was a glint in his eyes I recognized from kids' games under summer trees. The look you get right before he climbed too high and jumped anyway. You're Liam Thorne, I said. You turn corporations into puppet theaters for fun. Don't pretend this is beyond you. His mouth twitched despite himself. What do I give you in return? He asked. I stand beside you when we expose them, I said quietly. I confirm what's in the files. I testify if I have to. I make myself the inconvenient daughter who refuses to cover for her father's crimes. That puts a target on your back, he said. I've been one since the day they put my mother's name in your headlines, I replied. At least this way, I pick why. You don't owe me anything, he said. Not after what I've done. I'm not doing it for you, I said. I'm doing it for her. For me. And for Amber. If our parents were too cowardly to stop this, then I guess it's our turn. He stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Fine, he said at last. We do it your way. The second voice snarled. You're making a mistake. She'll ruin you. Shut up. The answer came so fast and clear I didn't realize it was his thought until I saw the way his eyes widened, like he'd surprised himself. My headache pulsed. We have 3 days, he said. Hayes scheduled a joint shareholders gala to celebrate the stabilization of the Thorne Corporation. He's planning to announce a deeper integration, one that would make it almost impossible to oust him without blowing up the company. And Celeste? I asked. We'll be there, he said flatly. At his side. Of course she would. Good, I said. It's always better when all the villains show up for the same party. His mouth curved, brief and humorless. You realize once we do this, he said, there's no going back. Your father will lose everything. So will Hayes. People you've known your entire life will fall with them. I know, I said. And you're okay with that? No, I said softly. But I'm still going to do it. That, more than anything, made something in his expression soften. Then we plan, he said. The gala was held at a hotel ballroom that made our wedding look understated. Crystal chandeliers. Red carpet. Photographers in a neat line like a firing squad. Reporters with questions sharpened into blades. I stood at the edge of it all in a simple black dress Liam's assistant had found for me at the last minute. No jewels. No diamonds. Just a thin silver chain my mother had given me on my 18th birthday. You don't have to do this, Liam murmured at my side. You've said that 3 times, I replied. If you're trying to change my mind, you're doing a bad job. He huffed out something that might have been a laugh. You stay near the back until I give the signal, he said. We'll go through the board first. Once they're cornered, Hayes can bluster all he likes. It'll look like what it is, desperation. And my father? His jaw tightened. He'll try to take the deal he always does. Slip out the back and pretend none of this is his fault. I won't let him, I said. He glanced at me. You really are your mother's daughter. The second voice hissed. She's also Sterling's. Don't forget that. I pressed my nails into my palm until the noise faded. When we entered the ballroom, heads turned. The last time I'd walked into a room like this at his side, there'd been a second bride. Tonight, there was only a woman at the front of the room in a shimmering gown, her arm linked with an older man's. Celeste Hayes and her father. Celeste's smile froze when she saw me. What is she doing here? She hissed, her voice just loud enough to carry. Liam's expression didn't change. She's a shareholder, he said. As is her family. They have every right to attend. Liam, she said sweetly, clinging to his arm. You can't seriously still be dragging this little charity case around. It's embarrassing. He peeled her fingers off his sleeve like they were something sticky he couldn't stand to touch. "Ms. Hayes," he said, voice cool, "you're about to have much more serious problems than embarrassment." Her eyes flashed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Lucy and Hayes asked, stepping forward. "Is there an issue we should be aware of, Mr. Thorne?" "Several," Liam said. "But don't worry. I've prepared a presentation." The room shifted around us. Board members drifted closer. Journalists pricked up their ears. My father hovered near the refreshment table, pale and sweating. When the lights dimmed and the first slide appeared on the massive screen behind the podium, a hush fell. Not a quarterly report. Not a forecast. A wire transfer. From Hayes Holdings to a shell company. A second slide. From that shell to a Sterling-controlled entity. A third. From there to a consultancy fund in my mother's name. Liam's voice cut through the silence. 5 years ago, he said, the Thorne Corporation collapsed under the weight of a manufactured scandal. Market manipulations, false reports, and a carefully crafted media narrative pointed to one villain, a woman who, conveniently, died before she could defend herself. Faces turned toward me, then away, uncomfortable. That story was incomplete, he said. Tonight, we're going to fill in the gaps. He walked them through it. The extortion. The loan contract. The doctored reports. The timeline that never quite made sense, except no one had bothered to ask why. Each slide was another brick in a wall I hadn't known how to build on my own. Somewhere along the way, my father went from pale to chalk white. Lucy and Hayes' slick composure cracked around the edges. "This is absurd," Hayes snapped when a recorded audio of his conversation with Liam's father played, the sound filling every corner of the room. "You expect us to believe this isn't edited?" "Funny you should mention editing," Liam said mildly. "We had a forensic team analyze both your versions and ours. Would you like to see the discrepancy reports?" Hayes' eyes flicked to the back of the room, searching for an exit that no longer existed. "And of course," Liam added, "we couldn't present a full picture without input from the family you so kindly used as your scapegoat." His gaze found me. For a second, the ballroom dissolved into white noise. "Ms. Sterling," he said. "Would you care to join us?" Every head turned. 5 years ago, on a different stage, I'd stood in white while they laughed at me. Tonight, I walked forward in black while they held their breath. I took the microphone. "My mother's name was Emily Sterling," I said. My voice didn't shake. "You knew her as the woman who destroyed the Thorne family. The thief. The traitor. The convenient villain." I let the words settle like dust. "She wasn't," I said. "She was a consultant who refused to sign her name to a lie. She recorded her conversations with the people who tried to use her, who threatened her family when she refused to be their shield. And she hid the evidence somewhere she hoped they'd never think to look." I nodded toward the screen. The last slide froze on my mother's face. "She trusted that one day, someone would care enough about the truth to find it," I said. "We can argue about corporate governance all night. But this isn't only about money. It's about who we allow to write the story when the people who actually lived it are gone." My father lurched forward. "Laura," he choked. "You don't understand. They would have destroyed us." "You helped them," I said, turning to him. "You took their money. You signed their contracts. You let them use Mom's name because it was easier than standing up to them. Easier than losing your precious position." His face twisted. "I did it for you and Amber." "No," I said. "You did it for yourself. If it had been for us, you wouldn't have sold me twice. First to a lie about my mother, then to a lie about my own life expectancy." Gasps rippled through the room. "Your doctor," he started. "Was on Hayes' payroll," I said. "He altered my diagnosis so you could push me into a marriage before I had the chance to ask why my life was suddenly worth more as a bargaining chip." My voice thinned for a second, but I forced it steady. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, turning back to the crowd. "The evidence is going to the authorities. To the regulators. To every journalist in this room. Whatever crimes were committed will be investigated and punished." I looked at my father. "And I am formally renouncing my shares in Sterling Group," I said. "Effective immediately. They'll be placed into a trust under my sister Amber's name, managed by a third party, and used to fund scholarships in my mother's honor. Not 1 cent will go to you." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Laura, he whispered. You can't. I can, I said. And I just did. There it was. The moral decision I'd been avoiding since the day I walked into that ballroom in white. Choosing truth over the people who had taught me to be afraid of it. You can try to spin this, I told Hayes. You can hire all the PR firms you want. But the documents are public now. The recordings. The altered medical records. Every lie you built your empire on is at the top of this screen. People can decide for themselves what kind of men they want running their money. The room buzzed with low, shocked voices. Hayes' lawyers moved, their mouths tight. Security entered quietly at the back as regulators and law enforcement, invited by Liam in advance, stepped forward. For once, the chaos wasn't centered on me. It was centered on the men who had assumed they'd never have to answer for anything. As they were escorted out under a hail of flashes, I caught a glimpse of Celeste, her perfect makeup cracked, her expression wild. You think this changes anything? She spat as she passed me. You're still nothing. You're still the girl who showed up to a wedding that wasn't hers in a dress she didn't deserve. I looked at her and felt tired. I know who I am now, I said. That's enough. You'll regret this, she snarled. Maybe, I said. But if I do, it'll be my regret. Not my parents'. She glared at Liam. You chose wrong. For a second, the old rage flickered in his eyes. Then he looked at me. No, he said. I finally chose right. The gala dissolved into statements, interviews, hurried calls. My father was led away in handcuffs, protesting. Lucy and Hayes disappeared under a crush of cameras. Board members scrambled to distance themselves from the mess. Somewhere in the middle of it, Amber called, sobbing into the phone. Is it true? She gasped. Dad, Mom, everything on the news. Yes, I said gently. It's true. How could you do this to him? She cried. How could you? I didn't do this to him, I said. He did it to himself. I just stopped helping him hide it. There was a long silence. Are we going to be okay? She whispered. No, I said honestly. Not for a while. But one day, yes. You will be. I don't care about money, she said in a rush. I just don't want to lose you too. My throat closed. You're not losing me, I said. I'm right here. And I'm not going anywhere you can't visit without a passport. She sniffled. Promise? Promise. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I leaned against a pillar outside the ballroom, sucking in cool night air through the open side doors, trying to remember how to breathe without counting the seconds like they were numbered. Footsteps approached. I thought I'd find you out here, Liam said. I didn't turn. Aren't you supposed to be beating back panicked shareholders with a stick? They've seen the numbers, he said. And the evidence. They'll grumble, then thank me the next time the quarterly report goes up instead of down. You sound very sure of yourself, I said. It's what I'm good at, he said simply. He stopped beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. For a moment, we just stood there, looking out at the city lights. I meant what I said, he murmured finally. About choosing right? I let out a breath that tasted like something between exhaustion and disbelief. You also meant what you said when you told me to kneel in your kitchen, I pointed out. And when you called me a gift. He flinched. I know, he said. And there isn't an apology big enough to cover any of that. I thought hurting you would balance the scales. As if punishing you for your mother's supposed sins would make losing my parents less pointless. He stared out at the skyline, jaw tight. I made you into a symbol, he said. It was easier than admitting I was wrong. Easier than admitting I might have been the one who walked away from the truth. The second voice stirred. Don't do this. Don't let her see you like this. Who is that? I blurted before I could stop myself. He blinked. Who is who? The other voice, I said. The one that keeps telling you not to care. Not to trust me. To remember your parents but only in the way that suits your anger. He frowned. I've never said that out loud. I know, I said. That's the problem. His gaze sharpened. Laura. What exactly have you been hearing? I winced. I thought I was losing my mind at first. At the wedding, I heard you, someone, thinking I looked like I was about to shatter. Then something about your parents. In the kitchen. In the hospital. It's like there are two versions of you arguing in my head and I can't tell which one is winning. He stared at me, stunned. That's not possible, he said. I know, I said again. Autoimmune disease, not psychic powers. Trust me, the doctors would have mentioned it. We stood in awkward silence for a second. Then he said, slowly, what, exactly, did you hear in the hospital? I swallowed. You thought if I died in your house, you'd never. Something. Finish the sentence, Thorne. He looked away. I'd never forgive myself, he muttered. I told myself I wanted you to suffer. That it was only fair. But when you collapsed, all I could think was, if she dies now, I never get to make this right. My chest tightened. And the other voice? I asked. He hesitated. I've been in therapy, he said abruptly. Since my mother died. I was? Not in a good place. The therapist suggested voice drafts. Recording what I really thought, then listening to it later with more distance. Seeing where I was talking like myself, and where I was talking like the angry, traumatized kid who lost everyone and wanted the world to match his pain. I blinked. Voice. Drafts, I repeated. He nodded once. There's an app. It syncs across devices. I forgot I'd installed it on my old phone, the one I gave you when your screen shattered in college. My mind raced. Old phone. Shared account. Syncing. I thought of nights in the mansion when my old phone had buzzed faintly in my pocket, notifications I'd ignored because I couldn't afford new data. The way my earbuds sometimes chimed softly when the screen was dark. How many drafts are we talking about? I asked slowly. A lot, he admitted. Half of them unsent. They stay in a cloud folder unless you specifically upload them. I never did. I covered my face with my hands. Oh my God, I groaned. What? He demanded. I've been hearing you argue with your own therapy app, I said. And my brain turned it into telepathy. He stared. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Not the sharp, mocking sound I'd heard when he threw plates at my feet. A real laugh, raw, startled, incredulous. You thought you were hearing my thoughts, he said, still sounding half in shock. Yes, I said miserably. I thought I was finally cracking under the pressure. The app must have auto-downloaded drafts to your phone, he said. If the old account is still logged in, it would ping every time I recorded something. You probably got bits and pieces at the worst possible moments. At least your subconscious has decent timing, I muttered. Half those drafts shoved you into doing the right thing. He sobered. They shoved me into admitting I wanted to, he said. You did the rest. We stood there, processing the absurdity. Of all the ways my life could have gone off the rails, accidentally subscribing to my enemy's therapy drafts had not been on the list. So, I said after a moment. Where does this leave us? He was quiet for a long time. Legally, he said, our arrangement stands. You're still my wife, on paper. The board will want stability after the stunt we just pulled. On paper, I echoed. Personally, he went on, I have no right to ask you for anything. You could take your share of the settlement from Hayes, walk out of this house, and never see me again. No one would blame you. My heart twisted. What do you want? I asked, because for once, I needed the answer spoken, not half heard through a glitchy app. He swallowed. I want to give you a choice I should have given you from the start, he said quietly. If you want out, I'll sign whatever you put in front of me. Divorce, annulment, public statement. I'll make sure your name is cleared everywhere mine ever dragged it through the mud. I'll buy your father's debts, free up Amber's trust, and walk away. He took a breath, steadying himself. But if you don't, he added, if there's even the slightest part of you that thinks we could rebuild something from this mess, I'd like the chance to try. Not as revenge. Not as penance. Just as two people who've seen each other at our absolute worst and are still standing. The second voice murmured. This is a mistake. She'll leave. She should leave. I looked at him. At the boy who'd once clung to a tree branch and begged me to look up. At the man who'd turned his grief into a weapon and finally set it down. For most of my life, I'd let other people's decisions dictate my own. My mother's sacrifice. My father's cowardice. Liam's anger. The doctor's verdict. Tonight, I'd chosen for myself. I wasn't about to stop now. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. Not all at once. Maybe not ever, not completely. He nodded, gaze steady. Fair. And I don't know what I look like if I'm not dying, I added. I've built so much around the idea that I was running out of time, I don't know how to behave when the clock isn't screaming in my ear. We'll figure it out, he said. Or we won't. Either way, it's your life. Not a debt ledger. I huffed out a breath. For now, I said slowly, I want space. I want to take Amber and get her away from the mess, at least for a little while. Somewhere quiet where people's last names don't matter so much. He nodded. I can transfer funds to an account in your name, he said. No strings. Call it restitution. Call it a buyout, I countered. Of my shares, of my silence, whatever makes your board sleep at night. I don't care. I just want a clean slate. And after that? He asked. I looked at him. At least this time, I said, if I come back, it'll be because I chose to, not because a bank notice and a falsified diagnosis shoved me at your feet. Something like hope flickered in his eyes, fragile and fierce. I can live with that, he said softly. We stood there for another beat, the night cool around us, the chaos of the gala muffled behind the doors. Liam, I said. Yes? You should probably revoke my access to your therapy drafts, I said. Or fire your IT department. One of the two. His mouth curved. I don't know, he said. They seem to have decent taste in who they forward them to. I rolled my eyes. Good night, Mr. Thorne, I said. Good night, Laura, he replied. As I walked away, down the steps and toward a future I hadn't planned for, I realized something simple and terrifying. For the first time in years, I wasn't moving like someone being pushed. I was just walking. My lungs hurt. My heart ached. My family was in ruins. My marriage was a question mark on a legal document. But somewhere past all of that, beyond the headlines and the court dates and the difficult conversations waiting with my sister, a tiny, stubborn thought took root. Maybe borrowed time wasn't all I had left. Maybe, just maybe, I had a life.